Welcome, everybody. We are thrilled for you to join us today. We have a wonderful topic at hand. But before we get into it, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Josh Mallalieu. I'm one of the co-founders of Smeeple, and on behalf of my fellow co-founder, Calvin Holston, and the rest of the Smeeple team, we want to welcome you to this month's Expert Spotlight and Series. For those of you that are hearing about Smeeple for the first time, we are a platform that connects athletes and experts across a wide range of categories to consumers who are looking for assistance and guidance and help in those areas. And it's all done through video conferencing. You can feel free to scan the QR code, check us out online at smeeple.com, or certainly download the app and find someone who can help you in your journey, whatever that is. Before jumping into this topic, also, I do want to give a special shout out to our sponsor for this particular Sports Health Summit, Long Island's premier triathlete club, Landshark Endurance, for which I am a proud member. And I bring that up because this spotlight in particular is a topic that is very near and dear to me, which is mental health and wellness in the context of sports. I think all of us that are athletes, regardless of maybe something we played in high school or college, or even something that we've gotten into as we've gotten older, we can certainly appreciate the physical requirements that go into being successful in our sport and in our craft. But oftentimes we don't discuss and we don't put a spotlight on sort of the mental strength and the mental stamina that's required to be at a level of success that we want to be at. So with that, we'd like to introduce some of our panelists today. The first individual that we have is an esteemed gymnast from Penn State, Kalea, who's joining us to give us some perspective on her sort of collegiate journey and the success that she's been able to attain at that level. We're also joined by Giovanni, who is a ultra cyclist and is known for really having a very deep understanding of mental stamina, as we'll dive into some of his specific experiences later on. And then lastly, we have Naresh, who is, an elite tennis player, who once again, sort of as a sport that is oftentimes, success is driven by how quickly you can move on from the previous point to the next one. We're very excited to get his perspective as well. So we'll start just by having each of the panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll start to dive into some topics. Please feel free to drop questions into the chat throughout this time together, as we'd love to hear from you. And with that, Kalea, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Kalea McElligott. I'm a D1 gymnast at Penn State and currently a sophomore. I'm from Long Island, New York, and obviously I've been doing this sport for a very long time. I started when I was 7, which is considered late for gymnastics. People will say they start when they're like 3. But I remember when I was young, I would just throw mats out on my front lawn and I would just be tumbling all day and I would just throw skills, and I was always a daredevil. So my parents signed me up and were like, we got to get this girl into a gym. And obviously from there, I just fell in love with the sport. I fell in love with everything that comes with it and the strength that you have to build. But mentally, obviously, there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, you're constantly being judged based on how good you do. And that's very hard for a lot of people to get. So I'm really excited to talk about mental health with everyone today and answer any questions that come up.
Great. Thank you. And Giovanni?
Hello, my name is Giovanni Prosperi. I'm from Italy, but I moved to the United States in 2019. And since that that year, I live in Cleveland, Ohio. My sport is ultra cycling, and I'm both a racer and a coach. And I believe that mind is in my sport is almost everything, and I'm happy that I have the opportunity to share some of my thoughts today with you.
Great. And Naresh?
Yeah, so my name is Naresh, and I'm originally born and raised from India. I moved here when I was about 9 years old. We were in Florida first, and I started tennis when I was around 5 in India, but I didn't really um, take it, I guess, seriously and get a coach till middle school, high school. I play for North Carolina Central University. I'm a junior here, and being in a sport where even the professionals, you lose probably almost every week. You know, there's only one winner every week in tournaments, so you have to be able to learn to deal with losses more than wins. So I'm excited to talk about the mental aspect of tennis.
Great. Well, thank you all, and thank you so much for being here. We are excited to jump in. Kalea, I'd like to just sort of start with you. I certainly can appreciate what you're sharing in terms of, starting at such a young age and sort of, just how did you get started initially, right? Like, what led you into this particular field, and what really inspired you to kind of see this as a avenue for you to kind of be able to pursue and really commit your life's work towards?
Yeah, so growing up, my mom actually did cheer growing up. So um, she would always teach us how to do handstands and cartwheels. And kind of from there, they put me and my sister in dance.
Mm.
And I remember me just wanting to flip around. And my sister ended up doing the dance path, and I was put into gymnastics. And I remember I told one of the coaches that I could do a back handspring, and they were like, "Okay, let's evaluate this girl." I was like 5 years old. I could not do a back handspring, but I said I could, and I just like remember chucking it and doing it, and they were like, "Okay, we want her on the team." So my story is definitely a little bit different, probably than most people, because I was more of like a daredevil and just like I just wanted to flip. Like that was all I wanted to do. So I remember starting at my first gym called All Stars, and they brought me all the way up into line, which is like a very high level. But my form was not the best. So obviously, I would go chuck the biggest skills, but it wouldn't be the best. So I remember switching gyms to Infinity Elite, and they brought me to my collegiate career and really changed my form and everything that came with it. And obviously, better form, better gymnastics, better scores. So
Mhm.
it kind of all kind of ties in. But yeah, I was just always striving to be the best no matter where I was. I always wanted to just show off who I was and show off the skills that I learned. And I very much wanted to just be a coachable person. And anything my coaches would say to me, I would just do.
How is someone who obviously started off in the field at a young age, how did you start to sort of develop some of the mental fortitude to the point you brought up earlier in terms of about like always being judged, right? Everything that you're doing was always about precision and execution. How do you work through that at a young age, and then obviously even now at a higher level in D1?
Yeah, so starting off really young, I didn't even know. I obviously knew I was getting judged, but I didn't even look at the scores. I was so young that I was just saluting, doing my routine, and that was it. But as I got older, obviously, when you have to score a certain amount to, let's say, move on to a regional championship and then national championship, scores became a lot more important, and the pressure with that also increased. So that was looking at like, am I good enough? Am I this? Am I that? So obviously, hard days and hard competitions really made you look back and reflect on who you were. And I think for a lot of gymnasts, at least, it's easy to say that you're not good enough and that this score defines you. But
Mm.
for my mistakes and my struggles, I always turn them into opportunities for myself. And I feel like that was a huge thing that carried me to the collegiate level, because I feel like a lot of people put so much pressure on themselves and so much pressure to be perfect and get that perfect 10. But
Mm.
kind of taking a step back and focusing on what you can do to improve, I think is game changing.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So Giovanni, I wanted to ask you just sort of a question. I mean, first of all, can you give us a little bit more context around ultra cycling, right? What is it? What is it about mental strength being sort of a critical component to being successful in the cycling world?
In the cycling world, overall, not in ultra cycling, I believe that the mind is very important because an endurance sport like cycling, you have to keep pushing and working out every day. So that's very demanding, let's say, to find the strength to get out, get up, get on your bike and ride every day. Because some days maybe you just want to rest at home. Especially now that winter is still here in Ohio, it's cold and I have snow outside. To go out and ride, it's not so easy. In ultra cycling, we go no stop for very long distances, like 500 miles, or the basic is 24 hours without sleeping. And okay, you can be fit as you wish, but if you don't have mind strength that pushes you during all those hours, it's not easy. So it's not just about training your body; it's a lot about training your mind. Uh, okay, I don't go. I don't like really much 24 hours races. I more for a very long distances, like at least 48 hours, and so 500 miles on. And to keep riding with sleep deprivation and everything that can happen during such a long race. If you're not strong in your mind, you're gonna resign. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And this mind strength, it's something you have to build day by day, step by step.
Hmm. Can you talk a little bit about some of the tools and sort of practices that you sort of go through in your preparation to kind of help strengthen your mental fortitude?
Uh, yes, basically, uh, it, as I was saying, it's something that you have to build day by day, and you always have to fight against the adversities. And then it's very important for me that I enjoy what I'm doing. So, uh, of course, if you don't like to be on the road so long, it's impossible. And there are many small tricks that I use during a race on a very long workout, like uh, splitting the race in smaller parts, in smaller steps. Like, for example, the longest I've done was 2,300 miles. And I was like just telling to myself, oh, just go another 100 miles and another 100 miles. If I can do 100 miles a time, I can get to the finish line. If I can get to the end of this day, I can make it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's great.
So,
Appreciate it.
like one pedal stroke at a time.
Mm-hmm. So Naresh, I want to spend some time talking with you. Obviously, you shared the as a sport as a whole, right? There's more losers than there are winners, certainly. Talk to me about some instances where you've had to really sort of work through different forms of adversity, because in the world of tennis, there doesn't seem to be much sort of downtime per se. Certainly during a match, to be able to sort of regroup, regather, and kind of move on. I would love to hear from your perspective in terms of some of the strategies that you've had to utilize both in the context of a competition, but then also in the preparation for that competition.
Yeah, so I'll start with the actual competition first in the match. There's matches where you could still win based on how the scoring system works in tennis. You could still win a match, but you can still win a match, but by losing more points than the opponents, if that makes sense. So, like for example, there was a match a few years ago, Novak and Federer, Wimbledon. I think was a 5-setter. Novak won, but by stats, if you look, Federer won most points overall in the match. But even though Novak won the actual, the entirety of the match, and that's possible in tennis because you win a game by winning, there's 15, 30, 40, and then deuce and however many. But it's really important in tennis there's key points that you have to win. You might not just notice it, but there's like momentum shifts and all of this. And if you're able to really lock in on those key specific points, you'll be able to win the match. You don't have to win all the points. You have to win like 50, maybe more than 50% of the points, right? Even player like Federer, over his whole career, he won a little over half of the points more than his opponents won. So it's really fine margins. But even though, Federer, you look at overall results, like he's won over 80% of his matches, but none of his matches were like he just won 100% of his points. No, you're gonna lose a lot of points, and you just have to know that there's gonna be shifts, momentum shifts, and kind of weather the storm that way. Not getting too caught up on one point, because the next point is gonna come, and if you get caught up on one point, it's gonna keep bothering you until the end of the match, and eventually you're not gonna be able to really capitalize on your other opportunities. So that's in competition, but leading up to a match, I would say you can control, the controllables, what you can control, like proper practice, proper sleep, proper food, nutrition. From the mental side, more specifically, you can try to do a lot of visualization, try to, before you even step on the court, try to imagine what you're going to do, the type of points you're going to play. I found something that's cool is that, especially in college, since we visit a lot of like play away matches, for example, we try to search their site, like their playing site on Google, if we've never been there, and try to see how their surroundings are, try to visualize that space. Because sometimes I think a new environment, just how it looks, can kind of mess with you if you're seeing it for the first time during a competition. So I think it's good to kind of get a look at it before, even if it's, online. Try to picture yourself there, going in there, warming up, whatever you're doing that day, and try to put yourself in that space. And that, that's a lot of things that you can do to get your mind in the game before even the game starts.
That's super interesting. I'd actually love to pivot that into sort of a question, and Kalea, I'd love, just from your standpoint, but like, and obviously Giovanni as well, just like, how do you keep training fresh, right? You're dealing with, seasons that extend such long periods of time. How do you keep training fresh so that your body isn't plateauing, your mind isn't sort of plateauing, and you're continuing to be able to kind of maximize what you're getting out of your preparation?
Yeah, so I actually really love the visualization aspect of it all. That is something that I do before every routine that I do. I think it's very important, but also I journal a ton. I think writing down my goals of, like, even if it's the day before a meet or my meet day goals, or even if it's just practice goals that I'd like to accomplish during the week, I'm always journaling, I'm always writing things down. And it kind of gives my brain a break to think of like a million different things. It kind of hones in on what exactly I want to do. So I feel like kind of decluttering my head and just like writing down exactly what I want to accomplish really helps me. But there's obviously things that you can do that you can control, obviously nutrition, sleep, and all that other thing. But mental health is something that you can definitely control in a way, but it's a little bit harder. But there's definitely the things that you can do to help it. I also do read a lot, and I always reference back to this book called The Four Agreements. It has 4 fundamental beliefs: that it's be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. So I always try to go back to those if I'm in a time of stress, because really when you're extending your season for so long, like your body's there, but mentally you need to be there. Because when you
Mm.
find breaks in your body and you're in pain or whatever, you have to lean back on your mental capacity to bring you through. So I think that's really important to kind of treat your mind as if it's just like another part of your body because it is. And I think it controls so much of your body. So definitely, I like to read. I go back to those four fundamental beliefs, and that really helps me.
Yeah, I really love that point, and I actually would love to ask the other two panelists sort of a similar question. But on those days where your body is telling you one thing, right? How do you find the sort of the mental fortitude to be able to kind of push through and continue to endure when it is whether you're dealing with some type of physical ailment or just pure exhaustion or even disappointment, right? I think we've all experienced times where we've set out goals for us in our races and in our meets and things like that, and maybe we've fallen a little bit short, and it can sometimes be all the more harder the next day to kind of get back out there. But talk to me, Giovanni, we'll start with you, just in terms of how do you push through mentally?
Day by day, because I set my goals are the goals I set are much harder than the training, than the everyday training I do. So that keeps me pushing through every day because I know that if I don't have the discipline to work out today, I won't finish during my race. That's gonna be impossible. So it's something. I build, as I was saying before, step by step, day by day. Yeah, I know I have this main goal and I have to finish. So that gives me the mental strength to get out on my bike and to keep working hard. Then this mental endurance that I have, it's something that everybody can build. Uh, it's like you start going for shorter rides, and then if you really enjoy the your sport that you're doing, also the problem. Okay, so you're gonna go faster and faster, and building your is gonna be at the same time building your mental strength.
That's great. Naresh, what about you?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, at a certain level after like even college or if you're in pros, I mean, you build the discipline in a way that, no matter how you feel that day, that you're gonna go out and train. But especially after losses, I think you have to remember that, like, what do you want
Mhm.
more, I guess. Feeling tired and just staying in bed, or if you're not gonna train, or you want to get better, and if you're not going to train, not get better, there's someone else that is going
Mhm.
to. And just, I guess that's more of a prioritizing what you want more. So I think you just have to tell yourself that, okay, if I don't do this, not like today, there's someone else that's gonna get better more, win more, um, and then go from there. But I also think over time you're gonna build.
Right. And is there a difference between, training as an individual or training then with, a teammate or, a group of teammates and things? Is there any difference in terms of some of that, sort of mental strength component there? Like just even in my own experience as an example, there are times where I might be sort of lagging, or I might find some of my workout routines kind of hitting certain lulls, and it's helpful to then all of a sudden have a group of people who not just hold you accountable but can also help get you out of your comfort zone and push you into some different areas and things that you may not have thought you could go to before. I guess I'll open that too. We'll start with you, Kalea, as I think Naresh has some tech difficulty.
Yeah, no problem. So obviously, I always lean on my friends, my closest friends and family, in times where I feel frustrated and it just feels like things are crumbling down. I think that's very important. And I think you're also going to find certain people that you know you can go to and certain people that are going to maybe turn on you and make you feel less. And I think it's important to kind of steer clear of that and know who your people are and who you can go to make you feel better. And I also think that when we are in these high pressure situations constantly, I think it's really important to figure out your why, like why you're doing your sport, who you're doing it for, and why you're really there day in and day out grinding. And I feel like if you don't have that why, like why are you even doing it? Like I think
Mhm.
it goes deeper and it kind of makes you understand why you love your sport, what you're doing it for. And
Mhm.
I think that's what also gets me through my harder days because when it feels like it's easy to give up, even during conditioning or little things, it's like, okay,
Mhm.
why am I doing this? All right, let's keep pushing.
Mhm.
I also
So
think friends and family reiterate that to you also. So,
yeah, yeah, and I appreciate having a mix of people in a community where certain ones have different roles, right? Where there are the people who will kind of like console you when you need consoling, but then there's other ones that are going to kind of kick you in the butt and say get out there and like we're going to go do this and kind of help sort of pull you along. Um,
yeah, of course.
One of the things that I really wanted to sort of pick your brain on is this idea of, and into your field, obviously, of gymnastics, where, everything is a technicality, right? And everything is, so closely watched that you set an expectation, you achieve a certain thing, and then how that expectation changes over time, right? Like your goals continue to increase. Your expectation is that you're going to get stronger and better at your craft. But how do you make sure that you maintain a mindset in the present versus always sort of comparing to the past? And I know just even from my own experience where one of the most valuable things that I've learned in my experience as a triathlete is the only number that I care about is the number that I'm dealing with in the moment, right? I can't compare myself certainly to another racer. And I'm really trying to, as hard as I can, not compare myself to what I was last year or what I was last race, because there are so many variables that can impact my ability to sort of perform. And I'd love to hear just sort of your perspective on that of, is that something that you're conscious of in terms of, well, this is how I've done last time, or this is how I've done against a school or against this other individual in this type of routine, versus just sort of looking at it in the context of your own goals in this moment?
Yeah, so I think as I got older in this sport, especially, I realized that focusing on the present moment when you're competing, when you're doing a skill is so important. When you're competing, your nerves are high, even in practice, because we're always taught to practice exactly how you compete, because when you compete, then it'll be easy. And I think focusing on that is really important. But really, I think staying in the present and focusing on each skill at hand and each task at hand is so important because you can get up on beam, it's 4 inches wide, and if you're thinking about, okay, don't fall, don't mess this up, don't like you still have this, you still have that, you're gonna just crowd your mind. So staying present is the most important thing you can do. But I also think taking each meet, each practice day by day, focusing on what you can do each day is really what's gonna set you apart from other people because I think people get so caught up, they shame themselves for doing bad. They
Mm.
like fall into this space where they just don't feel good enough because they made mistakes here. And I think when we can take our failures and our mistakes and turn them into learning opportunities, that's when we can really see some growth. And that's really what I try to do. I just try to like take one competition, pick some certain things from it that I liked and certain things that I can improve on, and then throw it away.
Yeah.
Because if you just harp on what's bad and what's you're gonna just fall into a space where it's just negative. But I think we can always take positives from even a bad practice. But I also think that I walk into the gym and I just say, no matter what, I'm gonna do my best. So I can't get mad at myself if maybe it's not my best day that I've performed, but it's the
Mhm.
best I could do that day. So I think focusing each day, giving it your all each day, you can't get mad at yourself no matter what, because that's the best that you could put out.
Yeah, the idea of extending grace to oneself, it can oftentimes be one of the hardest things, right? It's like
For
easier,
sure.
far easier to extend grace to others than it is to ourselves when we're, when we're in these types of, training and competitions and things like that. Naresh, I want to swing it back over to you. We'll start with you. Obviously, I think coming out of the pandemic, years ago, which really started to shine a spotlight on mental health as a whole, which is, certainly a wonderful thing to come out of that horrific time. We understand the importance of the mind and how it's connected to the body, but also as part of that is, nutrition, right? And sort of what we're feeding in and how all of these different things are kind of connected. Can you talk to me a little bit about, what is your approach towards sort of keeping the mind sharp and feeding that with the right types of energy for you to be able to maintain your, your level of performance that you're looking to?
Yeah, so it obviously varies by sport, but for tennis, you're also endurance, but also a power athlete, kind of a mix of both. So I think of food as, food is fuel. So you are what you, I guess, whatever your fuel is, like you wouldn't want to put bad, low quality fuel in a, a Ferrari, or, depends on what car you have. So I think high quality nutrition, food is what's going to determine how you feel, perform throughout the day, even if you don't play a sport, I think. So for an athlete, I think it changes based on your needs. So if you're a power athlete or you're a weightlifter, you're probably not going to be eating the same as an endurance athlete or, a swimmer or something like that. So I think you have to make sure what is your needs and treat food as fuel. And not, I often tried, I've seen people get worried too much about taste. Personally, I think taste is important, but I still think taste is secondary to what the food is. The food is primary purpose is for you to perform your best if you're looking at it as an athlete. But if you're, I think, worried too much about taste, I think they'll kind of cloud over the actual purpose. You can make it, so it's more appealing, I guess. But I think you have to treat it as fuel, and that's the main thing,
Yeah. And Giovanni, what about you? I mean, obviously, being on a bike for so many miles and for such a long period of time, right? We know that food obviously can have tremendous impacts on our sort of mental and emotional capacities. Talk to me about how you approach nutrition.
Yeah, first of all, I'm vegan, so I don't eat anything that is from animals, and I always eat very, very clean food. My wife always says that I'm too disciplined with food, and for a cyclist, and because you're a cyclist too, to watch the weight is very important. So I'm also always struggling between eating enough and not eating too much. But the key is, like Naresh was saying, is to eat clean food, to eat very good clean food. Uh, that's the main thing to do. So when I'm eating clean food, vegetables and fruit, that for me is the primary source of food, of clean food. I'm happy I eat as much as I want.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and of course, during a big competition, I have a crew, and my crew like takes care of my nutrition. Uh, when I do like these very important races. That's where when I'm alone and I go alone for very long times, I need to eat whatever I find on the road, of course.
That's great. So I want to pivot the conversation to talk about, the off season, right? And then the need for one, or the need for at least dialing back maybe the intensity or the duration of training sessions and things. How do you guys approach that? How do you make sure that, I guess, how do you approach it? And then how do you ultimately start to ramp back up into, when it is more in season for your particular sport, and obviously from a mental standpoint, how does that shift? How does that work? How do you do it? Are there certain, tools and things that help you kind of get through that, help you manage that process? Kalea, we'll start with you just in terms of what that's like for you.
Yeah, so obviously we train all year round. So I mean, taking a week off is something that's like it's a lot for us. So we're always going, we're always grinding, but the summer is really when we can chill back a little bit. Our season is from January to April,
Mhm.
and our preseason starts in September, actually. So our preseason is the long stretch. That's where we're really, really dialing in our routines, getting in those pressure sets, and getting in that conditioning that will get us ready for season. Because during season, at practice at least, we'll kind of dial back on our numbers to kind of get us through the season going week after week competing. So really the summer is when we can try new skills, have fun with things, and just have take a second back from all the pressure. But that's also when nutrition and maintaining your body and keeping your strength is very important too, because if you fall back too much, the preseason will just be way harder for you. So at least for me, I think it's a time to get more ahead after season. So that's usually the standpoint that I take. I think nutrition is very important. I know we kind of took a step back from that, but obviously the stigma with gymnasts is like you eat less, you feel lighter, you do better, and it's just completely wrong. And as I got older, I realized that fueling is probably the most important thing. So taking the time to really get in tune with my body and the food that I'm taking in, I eat very whole, good foods. But I think doing that and really just taking a time to focus in on your mental health a little bit more so that by the time preseason and season ramps back up, you're more mentally fit.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Naresh, what about you?
So for tennis, it's
In
gone
terms
to
of,
where
just looking at
there's
your
a
season.
preseason, but it's
Sorry, go ahead.
very short. It's either November, December, like in the tour, you're gonna see a tournament almost every week, pretty much even till the end of December. I mean, people end their schedule, probably most players would end their schedule around November and then kind of spend time with their family, and then preseason is right there, like December, and then you're back out again. Probably you're going to Australia for the Australian, like that whole swing of tournaments. So preseason and your kind of vacation group to one. I get it's not very good in my opinion, but yeah, that's how it works in the pro tour. And then in college, you have a fall season and then a spring season, and then summer is you. Most players would compete and play a lot of other tournaments outside. But you use fall season as also kind of a way to build, a lot of lifting and heavy weight. If you're going to hit heavy weights and a lot of conditioning, fall season is probably the time to do it. And then spring is where you're going to play the more traditional season, like conference matches, dual matches, and your NCAA tournament. But for us, tennis preseason isn't as long as probably other sports. It's very short, very compact, and you just play a lot of tennis after that. And yeah,
That's cool. Great. All right. So before we go over to some questions and things that come in, I just want to do some just sort of final thoughts. And Giovanni, we'll start with you. But as we obviously are dealing with, a number of, folks tuning in today, and we'll obviously, get some exposure to you and hopefully people that are, already in the cycling world. But, what best piece of advice would you leave them as they start to think about their own sort of, endurance journey?
To love what they're doing, to love the sport, and to enjoy the freedom, the sensation of freedom that cycling can give.
Great. Naresh, what about you? All right. We'll go over to Kalea. I think Naresh had some technical problems.
Yeah, so obviously, like I said before, I would say figure out your why you do the sport, why you love it, and turn back to that in times where you're struggling. But I also loved the thought of having so much love for your sport. Obviously, you want to walk in and you want to enjoy what you're doing. I think that's very important. I don't think that people should be pushing themselves in spaces that they really just don't love. I think finding a love and understanding for your sport is very important. And I always try to have as much gratitude for any given situation as I can. Even in the failures, I try to have gratitude for myself and for the situation because obviously I see it as a learning opportunity and I see it as just another step to get to where I want to be. And obviously, the people that get you there, like my family, I'm so grateful for them for bringing me to practices day in, day out, and showing me the sport. And all the people and friends that I've gained from the sport, and the coaches that have taught me all these amazing things. Obviously, I feel like having so much gratitude and even like writing that stuff down is just really important.
Yeah, I will echo that. There are plenty of instances, and for someone who does marathons and Ironman and things, it's just to see the way that people come out and volunteer to support the athletes that are part of these different races and the events that go on. Like there is so much of a community that kind of really goes into making something be an environment that allows athletes to be able to just be very focused and locked in, but also get to experience, an emotional and mental sort of, drive that really there is
Yeah.
like none other, especially when you are doing things in front of family and friends and in front of so many eyeballs and stuff. So can really appreciate that. With that, that is all that we had sort of planned to discuss with our panelists today. Again, I want to remind everybody, these are all folks who are available on Smeeple and would love to certainly connect with you to be able to help you or anyone that in helps with their, tennis, gymnastics, sort of cycling and endurance sport journey. And as we said, you can find them by going to smeeple.com, searching for them there, and also downloading our app and connecting with them by booking an appointment with them as well. And I would just like to give a special shout out to the rest of the Smeeple crew, Aaron, Brittany, and Nicole for really helping spearhead all the back end of this, helping us navigate through a lot of technical difficulties today. But panelists, thank you again. Really appreciate the time, and stay safe and work hard. And we continue to look forward to seeing your success in your respective fields. So thank you.
Thank you.